The afternoon sun burned white over the Onyango mansion when the iron gates slowly closed. Amara Onyango stood on the polished driveway, her crutch sliding from her hand as security placed her suitcase beside the road. Her injured leg shook beneath her. Inside the house, voices moved on, calm, untouched, already forgetting her. Michael Onyango never came down. From behind tinted glass, his decision was delivered without hesitation. She no longer belongs here. Amara did not cry. She did not plead. She simply turned her face toward the upper floor, toward the room where her son had been moments before. Ethan Onyango had seen everything, and in that silence the boy made a choice that would unravel his father's power drag, buried truths into the light, and prove that even a billionaire cannot outrun the conscience of his own child. Before we continue, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? If stories of justice, healing, and courage move you, remember to subscribe and stay with us. Long before the gates of the Onyango mansion ever closed on Amara, there had been a time when that house did not exist, when Michael Onyango owned nothing more than ambition, exhaustion, and a stubborn belief that he could become someone the world would one day respect. He met Amara Wanjiku in a narrow classroom on the edge of Nairobi, where peeling paint clung to concrete walls and ceiling fans rattled like tired bones. She was a young teacher then, underpaid and overworked, but her voice carried a calm authority that silenced even the most restless students. Michael had come to speak to the class about dreams, invited by a charity program. He wore a borrowed jacket that didn't quite fit, and his shoes were cracked at the soles. Amara noticed those details. She always noticed the things people tried to hide. After the talk, she approached him with quiet curiosity, asking questions that went deeper than polite interest. Where did he come from? What had he failed at? What scared him? Michael was unused to being seen so clearly. Most people either dismissed him or admired his confidence, without probing the doubt beneath it. With Amara, he felt no need to perform. They began meeting after school hours at roadside cafes, on dusty sidewalks, beneath jacaranda trees, shedding purple petals onto the pavement. Amara listened when Michael spoke about building a company that would one day reshape Kenya's infrastructure. She didn't laugh. She didn't tell him to be realistic. She simply asked, "What will you build first?" When his early ventures collapsed, when investors disappeared and debts piled up, it was Amara who sold her jewelry to help him survive another month. When Michael slept on office floors, she brought him food. When he doubted himself, she reminded him that success was not proof of worth. It was a tool, nothing more. They married quietly, without spectacle. No cameras, no headlines. Just two people promising to stand together. Ethan was born during Michael's first real breakthrough, a contract that finally paid enough to breathe. Michael worked constantly, but Amara never complained. She raised their son with patience, filling the home with books, music, and stories about kindness. She taught Ethan that strength was measured by how gently you treated others, not how loudly you commanded them. The accident came without warning. It was a routine afternoon. Amara was returning from a parent-teacher meeting when a speeding vehicle ran a red light. The impact shattered metal and bone alike. She survived, but her spine did not heal the way doctors had hoped. Walking became difficult, painful, unpredictable. Crutches replaced confidence. Independence turned into calculation. Michael was there in the hospital at first. He held her hand. He promised nothing would change. But things always change. As Onyango Holdings expanded, Michael's life, filled with boardrooms and black cars, gala dinners, and televised interviews. The company's success fed something hungry inside him, a need for validation that grew louder with every achievement. His name began to mean something. People listened when he spoke. Doors opened, and slowly, imperceptibly. At first, Amara began to feel like an inconvenience. It was not in words, not yet. It was in how Michael walked ahead of her in public spaces, how he grew impatient when she needed time to climb stairs, how he stopped inviting her to events altogether. "It's not practical," he would say. "You'll be uncomfortable." He convinced himself he was protecting her. Agnes Achieng Onyango noticed the shift and pressed into it. Michael's mother had never approved of Amara, not because she was cruel, but because she believed survival required hardness. To Agnes, weakness invited disrespect, and disability was weakness made visible. She spoke softly, but her words were sharp. "People are watching," she reminded Michael. "They associate your household with your leadership. Appearances matter." Michael did not argue. He had learned that silence was easier than confrontation. Ethan, however, noticed everything. He noticed how his mother's laughter faded, how she stopped asking to attend family gatherings, how servants followed Michael's instructions but took their cues from Agnes. He noticed the way his father's eyes flickered with irritation whenever Amara needed help. One evening after a long day, Ethan found his mother sitting alone in the living room, her crutch resting against the sofa. The television played a muted news segment featuring Michael at a construction site, praised as a symbol of modern African excellence. "You used to go with him," Ethan said quietly. Amara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "He has important work." "So do you," Ethan replied. Amara reached for his hand. Sometimes loving someone means stepping back. Ethan did not understand then, but something hardened inside him. The Onyango mansion grew larger as the family grew smaller. Michael justified his distance with logic. He told himself that success demanded sacrifice, that sentimentality weakened authority, that his mother's advice came from experience. Yet at night he avoided looking at Amara too long, afraid that recognition might demand responsibility. When the invitation arrived for Onyango Holdings' most publicized corporate event yet, Amara hesitated before asking if she should attend. Michael paused, just a moment too long. "Maybe it's better if you rest," he said finally. "It will be crowded." Amara nodded. She always nodded. Ethan watched the exchange in silence, something tightening in his chest. He had grown up believing his father was a man of principle. Now he wondered when ambition had replaced love and why no one seemed willing to name it. That night, as Michael rehearsed his speech and Agnes discussed guest lists with Ruth Muekali over the phone, Amara sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the faint scars on her legs. She did not know that the distance she felt was no longer emotional. It was structural, and it was already being turned into a decision that would break their family apart. The night of the Onyango Holdings Gala arrived dressed in polished lights and controlled smiles. The venue overlooked Nairobi's skyline, glass steel, and ambition, rising into the evening air. Cameras lined the entrance. Executives stepped out of black cars with rehearsed confidence, their partners moving beside them like carefully chosen accessories. Inside, the atmosphere hummed with money and expectation. Michael Onyango stood at the center of it all. He adjusted his cufflinks as photographers called his name. His posture was flawless, his smile measured. This was his world now, a world where perception carried weight, where a single image could lift or sink stock prices. As he walked toward the entrance, Ruth Muekali fell into step beside him, her tablet already glowing with schedules and talking points. "Everything is on track," she said smoothly. "Media angles are clean. Investors from Dubai just confirmed." Michael nodded, eyes scanning the crowd. "Good. What about your wife?" Ruth asked carefully, casual. Michael hesitated. "She's resting." Ruth inclined her head as if in understanding, but her eyes flickered with calculation. "Of course, given the scale of this event, it's probably for the best." Agnes Achieng Onyango appeared moments later wrapped in an elegant kitenge gown that commanded respect without demanding attention. She greeted donors with practiced warmth, her presence unmistakably authoritative. "Tonight matters," she told Michael softly when they were briefly alone. "People must see strength, stability." Michael exhaled. "I know." Across the city, Amara Onyango stood in front of a mirror in their bedroom, smoothing the fabric of a modest dress she had chosen with care. She had not been officially invited, but she had not been told she was excluded either. For hours, she weighed the decision in silence. Ethan watched from the doorway. "Are you going?" he asked. Amara hesitated. "Your father didn't say not to." "That's not the same," Ethan replied. Amara managed a faint smile. "I want to support him." The drive to the venue was quiet. When they arrived, Amara felt the shift immediately. The subtle turning of heads, the pause in conversation. A few faces softened in recognition. Others looked away. Michael spotted them from across the hall. For a fraction of a second, surprise crossed his face. Then irritation followed, sharp and unwelcome. He moved toward them, his steps quick and controlled. "Amara," he said under his breath. "This isn't—" "I'll stay out of the way," she replied gently. "I just wanted to be here." Michael's jaw tightened. "It's crowded. You'll be uncomfortable." "I'm fine," she said. Ethan felt the tension ripple between them, invisible but undeniable. As the evening unfolded, Amara remained seated near the edge of the hall. She smiled when guests greeted her, accepted polite nods, and ignored the whispers that drifted just beyond hearing. She used to be a teacher, didn't she? Such a shame. Doesn't fit the image. Ruth Muwikali noticed everything. She leaned toward Agnes during a lull in conversation. "People are watching," she murmured. "They're talking." Agnes's expression hardened. "They always do." Ruth's voice remained calm. "In our line of work, perception becomes reality." When Michael took the stage to deliver his speech, applause filled the room. He spoke about progress, vision, and resilience, words Amara had once helped him shape late at night when doubt weighed heavier than success. As he spoke, a camera panned across the audience. It found Amara. The broadcast screens briefly displayed her seated form, her crutch visible, her posture careful. The room shifted. Conversation stilled. A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. Michael noticed. His voice faltered just slightly, but it was enough. After the speech, reporters circled him with sharpened curiosity. "Mr. Onyango," one asked, microphone poised, "how does your family support your demanding role as CEO?" Michael's eyes flicked instinctively toward Amara. "She prefers privacy," he said quickly. "I handle the public side." The words landed harder than he intended. Ethan saw his mother's face fall, not dramatically, not publicly, but enough. Agnes intercepted Amara, soon after, her tone polite but firm. "Perhaps you should rest now," she said. "The evening is long." Amara understood the dismissal for what it was. "I'll take Ethan home," she replied quietly. Michael did not object. The drive back was silent. When they reached the mansion, Amara went straight to her room. Ethan lingered in the hallway, anger tightening his chest. Later that night, as guests departed and headlines began forming, Ruth Muwikali sat with Michael in his private office. "We had a slight image issue," she said, scrolling through social media. "Nothing unmanageable." Michael rubbed his temples. "She meant no harm." "I know," Ruth replied. "But intentions don't protect brands. If we don't define the narrative, others will." Agnes entered without knocking. "This cannot happen again," she said. "You are building an empire, Michael. Empires require clarity." Michael looked down at the city lights below his window. For the first time he felt cornered, not by enemies, but by expectations he had allowed to grow unchecked. In another part of the house, Amara lay awake, listening to the distant hum of traffic. She replayed the evening in fragments, the camera's pause. Michael's words, the weight of being seen as something to manage rather than someone to love. Ethan sat beside her bed. "They're wrong," he said. "All of them." Amara reached for his hand. "Your father is under pressure. That doesn't make it right." She squeezed his fingers. Anger won't heal this. Ethan did not respond. His gaze was fixed somewhere far beyond the room, far beyond the night's quiet, because in that moment something inside him shifted from confusion to clarity. The gala had not merely exposed his mother to judgment, it had revealed the truth Michael Onyango refused to face. And the cost of that refusal was about to be paid. The decision did not come all at once. It arrived in fragments, quiet conversations behind closed doors, late-night calls that ended too quickly, documents placed carefully on Michael Onyango's desk with corners aligned and consequences unspoken. By morning, the house felt different. Not hostile, not loud, just resolved. Michael woke before dawn and stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his study, watching the city stretch awake beneath him. He told himself he was thinking clearly. He told himself that this was about order, about focus, about protecting what he had built from unnecessary risk. He told himself many things, none of which included the word fear. Agnes Achieng entered without knocking, as she always did. "This has gone far enough," she said, her voice low and steady. "Last night embarrassed us." Michael did not turn. "She didn't plan it." "That doesn't matter," Agnes replied. "People saw weakness. They talk." "She's my wife," Michael said. Agnes paused, choosing her next words carefully. "She was. Before the world began associating her condition with your leadership." Michael finally faced her. "You're asking me to erase her. I'm asking you to choose," Agnes said. "Your family's future or sentiment." Later that morning, Ruth Moekali joined them. Her tablet open, her expression professional. "Investor confidence dipped overnight," she said, sliding the screen toward Michael. "Nothing dramatic yet, but perception is fragile." Michael scanned the figures, his jaw tightening. "What are you suggesting?" Ruth did not hesitate. "A clean separation, quiet, controlled. We frame it as a private family matter." "And my son Michael asked." Ruth's eyes flickered. "Children adapt." The words settled heavily in the room. By noon, the paperwork was ready. Michael stared at the document, the pen resting between his fingers. It wasn't a divorce, not yet. It was a notice, a formal removal of Amara from the residence. Temporary, they said. Necessary. His hand trembled only once before he signed. The call to security was brief. "Prepare a vehicle," he said, "and pack only what's necessary." Amara was in the kitchen when they approached her. She sensed the shift before anyone spoke. The way the staff avoided her eyes, the way footsteps moved with purpose. When the head of security cleared his throat, her heart sank. "Madam," he said gently, "we need you to come with us." "Why?" she asked. No one answered directly. They escorted her upstairs, where a single suitcase lay open on the bed. Her clothes were folded with mechanical care. Her medications were placed on top like an afterthought. "Is Michael here?" she asked. Silence. Amara reached for her crutch. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. "I want to speak to my husband." Agnes appeared in the doorway. "He is busy," she said. "This is for the best." "For whom?" Amara asked quietly. Agnes did not respond. Ethan arrived just as they reached the stairs. "What's happening?" he demanded. Michael stepped forward. Then his expression composed, his eyes distant. "She needs to leave for a while," he said. "It's complicated." Ethan stared at him. "You're sending her away." Michael's voice hardened. "This is not a discussion." Amara looked from her husband to her son, understanding flooding in all at once. "Ethan," she said softly, "it's all right." "No, it's not," Ethan replied. "This is wrong." Michael raised his voice. "Enough." The word echoed through the hall. Security moved them forward. Amara's foot slipped on the marble step pane, flashing across her face. Ethan rushed to her side, but a guard blocked him gently, firmly. "Sir," the guard said, "please." Amara straightened herself, pride stiffening her spine where strength no longer could. "Don't," she told Ethan. "I can walk." The front doors opened. Sunlight poured in bright and indifferent. Outside a car waited. Michael stood at the threshold but did not cross it. "You'll be taken somewhere comfortable," he said. "We'll talk later." Amara searched his face for something regret, hesitation, memory. She found none. "Michael," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I stood by you when you had nothing." His silence was answer enough. She turned away. The gates closed with a final mechanical sound. From the upper floor, Ethan watched as the car disappeared down the drive. His hands curled into fists, nails biting into skin. That night the house was unnaturally quiet. Michael sat alone in his study, staring at the city lights. For the first time in years, the space felt too large. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself this was leadership. Down the hall, Ethan packed a small bag. He moved carefully, deliberately. Clothes, books, the watch his mother had given him years ago. He wrote nothing down. There was no note to leave yet. In a small room on the edge of the city, Amara sat on a narrow bed, her suitcase at her feet. The walls were thin. The sounds of other lives leaked through laughter, argument, music. She breathed in slowly. She had been discarded, removed, reduced to a problem solved. But as the shock faded, something steadier took its place. Resolve. She did not cry. And somewhere across the city, her son was already planning the first step of a path that would lead them back not to the mansion, but to truth. Amara Onyango woke before the city did. The room was small, barely wide enough for the narrow bed and a metal chair pushed against the wall. A single window faced an alley where delivery trucks would soon rumble past, shaking the thin panes. The air smelled faintly of cooking oil and detergent. It was not comfort. It was shelter. And for now that was enough. She sat up slowly, careful with her injured leg, and reached for her crutch. The movement sent a familiar pulse of pain through her spine, sharp but manageable. Pain had become a language she spoke fluently, one she translated into patience, into careful steps, into endurance that rarely announced itself. Downstairs, the clatter of pots and the low hum of a radio signaled the start of another day. Mama Halima Yusuf ran the small roadside eatery with a rhythm that belonged only to her. She was a stout woman with eyes that missed nothing and a voice that softened when it needed to. She had taken Amara in without questions the night before, after finding her sitting on a broken curb with a suitcase and nowhere to go. "Eat first," Mama Halima had said then. "We talk later." Now as Amara made her way down the narrow stairs, Mama Halima glanced up from the stove. "You didn't sleep much," she observed. "I slept enough," Amara replied, offering a grateful smile. Mama Halima slid a plate across the counter. "Food doesn't fix everything," she said, "but it helps the body remember it's alive." Amara ate slowly, savoring the warmth. Around her, the eatery filled with early workers, drivers, cleaners, market vendors, people who measured days by effort rather than applause. No one stared, no one whispered. Here, disability was not spectacle. It was simply part of life. After breakfast, Mama Halima wiped her hands on her apron and studied Amara more closely. "You can stay," she said plainly. "There's a room upstairs. It's not much. It's more than enough," Amara replied. "I'll pay when I can." Mama Halima shook her head. "You'll help when you can. That's payment enough." The first days passed quietly. Amara helped where she could, sorting vegetables while seated, teaching children from nearby apartments to read in the afternoons, offering gentle counsel to women who lingered after meals with stories heavy on their chests. Word spread slowly without effort. The woman with the crutch listened. The woman with the crutch explained things simply. The woman with the crutch did not judge. In the evenings, Amara sat by the window watching the city shift colors as daylight surrendered to dusk. She thought of Ethan. Often wondered if he ate well, if he slept, if he blamed himself. She resisted the urge to call. He needed safety. She needed strength. Across the city, Ethan Onyango felt the walls closing in. Security followed him more closely now. His phone usage was monitored. Conversations ended abruptly when he entered rooms. His father spoke to him only when necessary, and even then with a tone that suggested management rather than love. Ethan played the role expected of him. He attended school. He nodded at dinners. He said little, but at night he researched. He learned the bus routes that led to Eastlands. He memorized schedules. He deleted search histories. He contacted one person he trusted, Samuel Otieno, a young lawyer whose name he remembered from years earlier. "My mother helped you once," Ethan said over a brief call, his voice low. "I need help now." Samuel did not ask questions. "Tell me when and where," he replied. Back at the eatery, Amara felt her body falter one afternoon. She had insisted on helping more than she should, standing longer, moving faster. When dizziness overtook her, Mama Halima was there, instantly steadying her. "That's enough for today," Mama Halima said firmly. Amara protested weakly. "I'm fine. You're strong," Mama Halima corrected. "That's different." She guided Amara back upstairs and insisted she rest. As Amara lay there staring at the ceiling, she felt the weight of everything she had lost pressed down on her chest, her marriage certainty. For the first time since the gates had closed behind her, tears came quietly. She wiped them away quickly. Crying did not mean weakness. It meant release. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A young woman approached Amara after the children's lesson, her phone held awkwardly in her hand. "I recorded you yesterday," she said apologetically. "Teaching the kids. I posted it. People liked it." Amara frowned. "I didn't agree, I know," the woman said quickly. "I can take it down." Amara paused. "It's fine," she said finally. "Just be kind with it." The video spread modestly, at first shared among local groups, commented on by people who recognized sincerity when they saw it. No names were mentioned, no pasts uncovered. It was just a woman teaching children her crutch, leaning against the wall like an afterthought. Michael Onyango saw it 2 nights later, scrolling absent-mindedly through updates Ruth had flagged as community interest. He barely looked at first. Then he paused. Something about the woman's posture felt familiar. The tilt of her head, the cadence of her voice. He dismissed the thought and moved on. Back at the mansion, Agnes Achieng noticed Ethan packing a second bag. "You're being dramatic," she told him. "Your father knows what he's doing." Ethan looked at her steadily. "So did you." Agnes stiffened. "Watch your tone." Ethan did not raise his voice. "You taught him to value image over people. That's not strength." Agnes turned away. "You'll understand when you're older." Ethan zipped the bag. "I hope not." That night, Ethan slipped out quietly. No confrontation, no announcement, just absence. By morning, Michael Onyango would realize his household had lost more than a wife. It had lost its future. And in a modest eatery far from glass towers and guarded gates, Amara Onyango was learning something vital. How to rebuild a life not around permission, but around purpose. Ethan Onyango did not run. He walked out of the Onyango mansion just before dawn, dressed in a plain jacket and carrying a backpack, light enough to suggest intention rather than escape. The guards at the gate recognized him immediately. One of them hesitated. "Sir, should we inform your father?" the older guard asked. Ethan met his eyes. "If you stop me, you'll have to carry me back inside," he said calmly. "And you know you won't." The guard stepped aside. The city swallowed Ethan quickly, matatus honking awake vendors arranging produce, commuters moving with purpose. For the first time in his life, he was anonymous. The feeling steadied him. He took 2 buses and walked the last stretch, rehearsing what he would say if his mother refused to see him. He had prepared for that. He would accept it. This was not about comfort. It was about alignment. Amara was teaching when he arrived. She stood beside a chalkboard propped against the wall of the eatery, her crutch leaning nearby. Children sat on overturned crates, their voices rising and falling as they repeated words after her. She was mid-sentence when she looked up and saw him. The chalk slipped from her hand. "Ethan." Her voice broke. The children turned curious. Mama Halima froze near the doorway. Ethan crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped his bag, kneeling carefully so his face was level with hers. "I'm here," he said. "I'm not leaving." Amara's breath hitched. "You shouldn't have come. Your father." "Chose himself," Ethan replied. "I choose you." She reached for him, pulling him into a fierce, trembling embrace that startled the children into silence. Mama Halima turned away, pretending to busy herself at the stove. Later, after explanations and quiet tears, Amara insisted Ethan eat. He did, ravenous from travel and adrenaline. They spoke in low voices upstairs, words tumbling out what had happened after she left, how the house had closed ranks, how his phone had become a leash. "I don't have much," Amara said, glancing at the small room. "I won't ask you to stay if it puts you in danger." Ethan shook his head. "The danger is staying silent." That afternoon, they visited Samuel Otieno. Samuel's office was modest. 2 desks, a humming fan, stacks of files tied with string. He greeted Amara with a startled smile that softened into respect. "You don't remember me," he said, "but I remember you. You paid for my exam fees when my mother died. You said, 'Pass it forward.'" Amara nodded slowly. "I'm glad you did." Ethan laid out what he had uncovered. Emails, altered security logs, missing access permissions changed shortly before the gala. Samuel listened without interruption. "There's a pattern," Samuel said finally. "It points inward. Corporate communications, household staff. This wasn't spontaneous." "Can we prove it?" Ethan asked. Samuel exhaled. "Yes, but not quickly, and not quietly." That night, Michael Onyango learned Ethan was gone. Ruth Muekali delivered the news with professional restraint. He left before dawn. No vehicle, no staff assistance. Michael felt a flicker of panic he quickly buried beneath anger. "Bring him back." Agnes Achieng arrived moments later, her expression tight. "He's being dramatic. He'll return." Michael slammed his hand on the desk. "He will not humiliate this family." Across town, Ethan opened a new email account and drafted a single message. He did not send it yet. He read it aloud to his mother first. "It names what happened," he said. "No insults, no accusations beyond what we can prove." Amara listened carefully. "Truth without cruelty," she said. "That's the line." They waited. Over the next days, Ethan helped wherever he could, washing dishes, tutoring younger kids, carrying supplies. He learned the rhythm of the neighborhood, the unspoken rules. People noticed him, not as a rich boy slumming it, but as a young man who listened and worked. The video resurfaced, shared again this time with captions about dignity and patience. Comments multiplied. Still no names. Michael saw it again. This time he watched to the end. Something tugged at him. Recognition sharpened by guilt. He paused the video and leaned closer. The crutch, the voice. He dismissed the thought, irritation rising. Coincidence. Nairobi was full of teachers. At Onyango Holdings, Ruth began damage control. "We'll issue a statement about family privacy," she suggested. "Deflect attention." Michael nodded, but his focus wavered. The mansion felt cavernous. He noticed the empty chair at dinner, the silence where Ethan's questions used to be. Agnes pressed harder. "You cannot allow a child to undermine you." "He's not a child," Michael snapped. "He's my son." "Then discipline him," Agnes replied. "Publicly, if necessary." Michael said nothing. In Samuel's office, the first real breakthrough came when Lynette Achieng, a friend of Ethan's from school with a talent for systems, recovered partial backups from a neglected server. Timestamps didn't match. Access logs showed Ruth's credentials used after hours. This doesn't mean she orchestrated everything, Samuel cautioned, but it means she touched it. Ethan felt resolve harden. Then we keep going. Amara watched her son transform not into something reckless, but into something steady. She worried, of course. Mothers always do. But she also recognized purpose when she saw it. One evening after the children left and the eatery quieted, Amara sat beside Ethan on the steps. "You don't have to carry this alone," she said. He smiled faintly. "I learned that from you." Across the city, Michael Onyango stood at his window again, city lights blurring. For the first time since the decision, doubt cut through his certainty. He picked up his phone, then set it down. In a modest room with thin walls and a single window, a mother and son planned their next move, not for revenge but for truth. And once truth had a direction, it rarely stayed contained. Amara Onyango learned to pace herself. It was not a lesson she wanted, but one her body demanded. Each morning began with deliberate movements, stretching slowly, measuring pain, deciding what could be done and what must wait. The crutch became less a symbol of loss and more a tool of negotiation between will and limitation. At Mama Halima's eatery, routines formed naturally. Ethan rose early to help unload deliveries. Amara prepared lessons for the children who gathered each afternoon, their notebooks worn but their attention fierce. Mama Halima watched them with quiet approval. "You two bring balance," she said one evening, handing Amara a cup of tea. "The boy brings energy. You bring calm." Amara smiled. "We're learning." The children came faithfully. Some walked long distances. Others arrived hungry, clutching scraps of paper and borrowed pencils. Amara taught them letters, numbers, and without naming it, dignity. She listened to their questions. She asked them to read aloud, to think, to imagine future that did not shrink to fit circumstance. A neighbor began filming occasionally, never intrusive, never staged, just moments. Amara correcting a child's grip on a pencil, laughing softly when someone got an answer right, pausing to rest without apology. The videos traveled further this time. Still no names, still no backstory. "Why do people like it?" Ethan asked one night as comments multiplied. "Because it's honest," Amara replied. "And honesty makes people uncomfortable, in a good way." Michael Onyango felt that discomfort before he understood it. Ruth Mwakali brought the metrics first. "Community engagement is up," she said, scrolling through graphs. "It's not directly tied to us, but the narrative overlaps with our public values." Michael leaned back, eyes narrowing. "What narrative?" "Resilience, inclusion, grassroots education." Michael waved it off. "Trends." But that night he searched for the video himself. He watched carefully. The tilt of the head, the patience, the way the woman rested without shame. Recognition tightened in his chest. He closed the app. At the eatery, Amara's body protested one afternoon. A sharp wave of pain forced her to sit abruptly, breath-catching. Ethan was beside her instantly. "That's it for today," he said. The children protested softly. Amara lifted a hand. "Tomorrow," she promised. "Tomorrow we continue." Mama Halima nodded approvingly. Strength is knowing when to stop. They closed early. Upstairs, Amara rested, eyes closed. Ethan sat on the floor nearby, reviewing notes Samuel had sent, timestamps, access logs, names connected by thin threads of digital evidence. "This is growing," Ethan said quietly. "People are paying attention." Amara opened her eyes. "Attention isn't justice," "I know," Ethan replied, "but it can lead to it." The next day, a local radio producer stopped by the eatery. He spoke respectfully, asking if Amara would consider an interview about community education. "I'm not looking for a platform," Amara said gently. "We're not looking for spectacle," he replied. "Just your voice." She agreed on one condition: no mention of her past. The interview aired the following week. Amara spoke about access patience and the quiet work of rebuilding confidence. She spoke about how communities carry each other when systems fail. She never mentioned her marriage. She never named pain. Michael heard it in his car. He pulled over. The voice was unmistakable now. He gripped the steering wheel memories, rushing in uninvited late nights drafting speeches together. Amara correcting his tone, asking him to be clearer, kinder. At home, Agnes noticed his distraction. "You're letting this fester," she said. "Silence invites speculation." Michael snapped back. "Then maybe silence is what we need." Agnes stiffened. "You're losing control." "No," Michael replied quietly. "I'm realizing I never had it." Meanwhile, Ethan's efforts deepened. With Samuel's guidance, he mapped connections tracing edits to Ruth's department, identifying patterns of manipulation. Lynette continued to help, careful and precise. "This will hold," Samuel said one afternoon, tapping a file. "But timing matters." Ethan nodded. "We wait until the truth can't be buried." Amara watched her son navigate pressure with a steadiness that surprised her. He did not posture. He did not threaten. He prepared. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the alley filled with shadows, a woman approached Amara, hesitantly. "I saw you on the radio," she said. "My sister. She can't walk well. She stopped going out. Could you talk to her?" Amara nodded. "Of course." Word spread, not as fame, but as trust. Michael Onyango stood before the mirror that night. Tie-loosened expression unfamiliar. He thought of Ethan's empty chair. He thought of the gate closing. He thought of a life built on decisions made easier by power. He picked up his phone again. This time he dialed. It rang once, twice. Ethan answered, voice calm. "Yes," Michael swallowed. "I saw the video." There was a pause. "Then you know where we are," Ethan replied. Michael hesitated. "Come home." Ethan's response was measured. "Tell the truth first." The call ended. In the small eatery, Amara listened as Ethan recounted the conversation. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with resolve. "Whatever comes next," she said. "We don't rush. We don't bend." Outside the city breathed unaware that a quiet stand taken far from boardrooms and cameras was gathering the strength to change everything. The proposal arrived wrapped in elegance. Michael Onyango first heard of it during a late board meeting when the conversation drifted almost casually from quarterly forecasts to long-term stability. Ruth Moekali introduced the topic with practiced neutrality, her tone suggesting inevitability rather than suggestion. "There is interest," she said, tapping her tablet lightly, from a strategic partner in Johannesburg. "They admire our expansion into southern Africa. Their chairwoman has expressed personal interest in strengthening ties." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Personal?" Ruth nodded once. "Amale Dlamini. She leads Dlamini Group Holdings, infrastructure, energy, philanthropy, highly respected." Agnes Achieng leaned forward. "A woman of stature," she said approvingly. "Educated, poised, uncomplicated." Michael understood the implication immediately. His jaw tightened. "We're discussing business." "Business is built on relationships," Agnes replied. "You taught us that." The name followed him home like a shadow. Amala Dlamini arrived in Nairobi a week later, announced by a flurry of polite headlines and discreet curiosity. She was tall, composed, and unhurried, the kind of presence that made rooms adjust around her. At a private dinner arranged by Ruth, she spoke of development with clarity and of leadership with restraint. She asked Michael thoughtful questions. She listened. "You value efficiency," she observed, "but not at the expense of people." Michael nodded, surprised by the accuracy. "I try not to." Amale smiled. "That balance is rare." The conversation flowed easily, too easily. By the time dessert arrived, Michael felt something unsettling. Not attraction exactly, but relief. With Amale, there was no history to navigate, no vulnerability to manage. She represented a future, unburdened by reminders. Agnes noticed his ease and pressed gently. "People are asking questions," she said later. A new beginning would calm them. Michael did not answer. Across the city, Ethan Onyango read the news on his phone with a hollow feeling in his chest. He did not need commentary to understand the message. Replacement, erasure. Amara was washing dishes when he told her. "They're positioning someone else," he said quietly. Amara dried her hands slowly. "I expected that." Ethan's voice sharpened. "How can he move on like you never existed?" Amara met his gaze. "Because denial is easier than accountability." The next days were heavy. At the eatery, whispers reached Amara clients discussing the new woman rumored to be entering the Onyango household. Amara did not correct them. She focused on her work, on the children, on the steady tasks that anchored her. Ethan, however, struggled. He watched footage of Amale shaking hands with Michael, their images carefully framed. He listened to analysts praise the fresh chapter for Onyango Holdings. Each word felt like a dismissal. "He's rewriting the story," Ethan said one night, pacing the small room. "If he succeeds, the truth won't matter." Amara spoke calmly. "Then we don't let him rewrite it alone." Samuel Otieno cautioned patience. "Rushing now would weaken your case. Let them build their narrative. Then we dismantle it." Ethan nodded, though. Frustration simmered beneath his composure. Michael's world grew louder as Amale's presence expanded. Dinners turned into meetings. Meetings turned into public appearances. Ruth orchestrated every angle, careful to avoid explicit declarations, while allowing speculation to bloom. At home, Michael found himself rehearsing explanations he never voiced. He told himself Amale represented growth, not betrayal. He told himself Amara would understand eventually. One afternoon, he arrived home to find Ethan's room stripped bare. Agnes stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "He's gone," she said. "You let this happen." Michael felt something crack. "I didn't let anything happen." Agnes shook her head. "You chose appearances. This is the cost." That evening, Michael drove aimlessly, passing neighborhoods he no longer recognized. At a stoplight, a familiar voice drifted from a nearby radio, Amara's steady and warm discussing community learning. He reached to turn it off, then stopped himself. He listened. Across town, Amara ended the radio call and sat quietly. Mama Halima watched her with concern. "You're carrying something heavy," she said. "I'm letting it pass through." Amara replied. Later, Ethan returned from Samuel's office with news. "We have confirmation," he said. "Ruth authorized the edits. Agnes pressured staff. The chain is clear." Amara closed her eyes. "Then we're ready when the time comes." The time felt closer now. Amale invited Michael to a charity site visit on the city's outskirts. Cameras followed at a distance as they spoke with local leaders. Amale bent easily to greet children, asked practical questions, listened more than she spoke. "You're good at this," Michael said quietly. Amale met his eyes. "So are you, but you seem divided." Michael hesitated. "Leadership demands sacrifice." Amale's expression softened. "It demands honesty, including with yourself." The words lingered. That night, Michael received a message from Ethan, short, direct. "Tell the truth, or I will." Michael stared at the screen for a long time. In the eatery, Ethan sat beside his mother, drafting a statement they might never need. Amara watched him, pride and worry interwoven. "You don't have to fight him to become something better," she said. "I know," Ethan replied, "but I won't let him erase you." Outside Nairobi's lights flickered, city life unfolding, unaware that the careful construction of a replacement narrative was nearing its limit. Because the truth, once ready, does not ask permission. The truth did not reveal itself all at once. It emerged in layers, dates that didn't align, permissions that shouldn't have existed. Names that appeared too often in places meant to be neutral. Ethan Onyango learned quickly that evidence was less about dramatic discoveries and more about patience, about returning to the same files again and again until patterns grew undeniable. Samuel Otieno spread documents across his desk, the hum of the fan punctuating their silence. "This," he said, tapping a page, "is where it turns from suspicion into intent." Ethan leaned closer. Ruth Samuel nodded. "Communications access logs." She approved the edits, then covered the trail. But she didn't act alone. Ethan swallowed. "My grandmother." Samuel did not say the name. He didn't need to. They worked late assembling timelines, cross-referencing backups Lynette had recovered from neglected servers. The evidence was technical, unglamorous, devastating. It showed how a narrative had been engineered, how small omissions had been stacked into a justification, how authority had been used to make cruelty appear necessary. Ethan returned to the eatery after midnight, mind buzzing. Amara was awake, seated by the window with a book she hadn't turned a page of in an hour. "You found something," she said. He nodded. "Enough to prove it, not enough to end it." Amara considered this. "Then we wait for the moment when enough becomes undeniable." The moment, it turned out, would be built by pressure. Amale Dlamini's presence continued to expand. Joint site visits became joint statements. A photo of her and Michael, heads inclined in quiet conversation, circulated widely. Analysts praised stability. Commentators spoke of fresh vision. At Onyango Holdings, Ruth Moekali worked tirelessly to keep the narrative clean. She issued talking points, arranged interviews, redirected questions. She avoided lies, preferring selective truth, the most durable kind. Michael Onyango watched it all with growing unease. Amale sensed it. One evening, after a long day of meetings, she addressed it directly. "You look like a man bracing for impact," she said. Michael exhaled. "I'm managing too many fronts." "Then close one," Amale replied gently. Michael thought of Ethan's message. "Tell the truth or I will." At the eatery, attention intensified. More visitors came. Some brought notebooks, others questions. Amara welcomed them cautiously, careful not to become a symbol she hadn't chosen. She spoke about education, about access, about dignity. She did not speak about Michael. Ethan, however, felt the strain. One afternoon, as he returned from Samuel's office, a black car slowed beside him. The window lowered to reveal a security officer he recognized. "Your father wants to see you," the man said. Ethan's pulse quickened. "Tell him to call." The car moved on. That night, Michael did call. "I don't want this to become a spectacle," Michael said, voice controlled. "Come home. We can talk privately." Ethan's response was calm. "Privacy protected you. Public truth protects her." Michael's silence stretched. "You don't understand the consequences." "I do," Ethan replied. "I'm choosing them." The call ended. Agnes Achieng sensed control slipping and pressed harder. She summoned Ruth late one evening. "This boy is reckless," Agnes said. "We need to neutralize him." Ruth's expression remained neutral. "How discredit him? Frame this as adolescent rebellion." Ruth hesitated for the first time. "We must be careful. Evidence exists." Agnes leaned in. "Then bury it." Ruth did not respond immediately. In Samuel's office the next day, Lynette arrived breathless with news. "There's chatter," she said. "Internal. They're preparing a counter-narrative." Samuel looked at Ethan. "That means we're close." Ethan nodded, resolve firming. "Then we choose the stage." They chose a date already circled on Onyango Holdings' calendar, the annual leadership forum. Broadcast live, attended by board members, partners, and press. Transparency, Michael had once called it. Amara listened as Ethan outlined the plan. Her chest tightened. "This will hurt him," she said. Ethan met her eyes. It already has. We're just naming it. She reached for his hand. Then we do it without cruelty. Always. Ethan promised. In the days leading up to the forum, tension crept into Michael's movements. He rehearsed his keynote but stumbled over familiar phrases. He noticed Amale watching him closely. "You're carrying something you haven't told me," she said. Michael hesitated. Then quietly, "There are truths I avoided." Amale studied him. Avoidance is a choice. He nodded, shame flickering across his face. On the morning of the forum, the eatery buzzed with activity. Amara dressed carefully, choosing simplicity. Ethan adjusted his jacket hands steady. Samuel handed them a final folder. "Once we begin, we don't stop," he said. Truth moves forward. At the venue, Ruth Moekali oversaw final preparations, her composure flawless. Agnes arrived early, greeting dignitaries with practiced warmth. Michael took the stage to applause. He began his speech, measured, confident. He spoke of leadership, of responsibility, of the future. Then a murmur rippled through the hall. Ethan had entered. He walked with quiet purpose, Amara beside him, Samuel a step behind. Cameras shifted, whispers multiplied. Michael faltered, mid-sentence, recognition crashing through him. Agnes stiffened. Ruth's eyes widened. Ethan stopped at the front row. He did not interrupt. He waited. Michael finished his sentence, voice strained. He lowered the microphone slightly. "What is this?" he asked softly. Ethan spoke clearly without raising his voice. "It's time." Security hesitated. Board members leaned forward. Amara felt the room's weight settle on her shoulders. She breathed, grounding herself. Samuel stepped forward. "We request the floor," he said, "for the sake of transparency." A pause. Then from the board's chair a nod. Michael stepped aside. Ethan took the microphone. He did not accuse. He did not shout. He presented timelines, emails, access logs. He named decisions and the people who made them. He spoke of a woman removed not for wrongdoing, but for optics. Amara stood silently, present. As the evidence unfolded, the room changed. Phones lowered. Whispers died. Ruth's face drained of color. Agnes rose halfway from her seat, then sat back down. Michael felt the ground tilt beneath him. This was not a rebellion. It was an accounting, and there would be no turning back. Silence settled over the hall like a held breath. Ethan Onyango stepped back from the microphone, his hands steady, his face composed. The final slide on the screen froze in place. Timestamps aligned, permissions highlighted, a simple sequence that stripped intention bare. No dramatic language, no speculation, just proof. Michael Onyango stood a few feet away. The applause he had expected evaporated into a hush that felt heavier than noise. He searched the room for escape, for a friendly face, for a familiar certainty, but found only attention sharpened by disbelief. From the front row, Agnes Achieng rose to her feet. "This is inappropriate," she said, her voice tight. "Family matters should not be paraded before strangers." Samuel Otieno met her gaze. This became a corporate matter the moment corporate tools were used to justify harm. A murmur rippled through the audience. Board members exchanged looks. Journalists lowered their phones, then raised them again, recalibrating angles. Ruth Moekali remained seated, fingers locked together. Her composure had not cracked, but the color had drained from her face. Michael cleared his throat and returned to the microphone. "We will take questions privately," he said. "This forum is about leadership," Ethan interrupted, calm but firm. "And leadership answers when truth appears." The board chair stood. "We will recess for 15 minutes, he announced. "Legal counsel will review the materials presented." Security moved slowly, uncertainly, forming a loose perimeter that protected no one and everyone at once. Backstage, the air felt thin. Michael paced, running a hand through his hair. "You blindsided me," he said to Ethan. "You had no right." Ethan met his eyes. "I had every right. You took hers." Amara stood near the wall, breathing carefully. The adrenaline had begun to ebb, leaving a familiar ache in its wake. She focused on staying upright. Michael turned to her. "Why didn't you come to me?" She looked at him steadily. "I did. Many times. You were busy protecting a story." His jaw tightened. This could destroy everything. Everything built on silence. Samuel said quietly, "Is already unstable." A staff member entered. "The board requests your presence," she said to Michael, then glanced at Amara and Ethan. "All of you." In the smaller boardroom, the mood was clinical. Counsel asked questions. Samuel answered with precision. Lynette joined by video confirming technical details. Ruth was questioned last. "Did you authorize these changes?" a board member asked. Ruth hesitated just long enough to matter. "Yes," she said finally. At the direction of Agnes, cut in sharply. "I advised caution. I did not order misconduct." The room stilled. Michael closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something had shifted. The certainty he had worn like armor lay fractured at his feet. The board chair spoke again. "We will proceed with an independent investigation," he said. "Pending its outcome, Ms. Muakali is placed on administrative leave. Further actions will follow." Ruth nodded, once expression unreadable. Agnes rose. "This is an overreaction." Respectfully, the chair replied, "It is overdue." Outside the boardroom, the press waited. Michael knew what came next. Statements, spin, damage control. He stepped forward anyway. "I will speak," he said. Cameras flared as he approached the podium. He adjusted the microphone with deliberate care. Today he began. "Information was presented that raises serious questions about decisions made under my leadership." He paused. The words tasted unfamiliar. "I authorized actions that caused harm. I failed to listen. I failed to protect." Gasps. Silence. "This process will run its course," he continued, "and I will cooperate fully." He stopped there. No excuses, no deflection. When the cameras cut, Michael sagged slightly, the weight of it pressing down at last. Later in the quiet that followed, Amara sat with Ethan outside the venue, the city's noise filtering back in. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from exhaustion. "You did well," she said. Ethan swallowed. "So did you." At the eatery that evening, Mama Halima watched the mentor with concern. "You look like you ran a marathon," she said. "We did," Ethan replied. Amara rested the pain flaring and then settling. The children's voices drifted up the stairs, soft and familiar. She let them anchor her. Michael did not go home that night. He drove until the roads emptied, until Nairobi gave way to quiet stretches, where headlights revealed only asphalt and memory. He thought of the day he met Amara, of the promises he had made, without understanding how hard they would be to keep. At dawn, he stopped the car and called Ethan. "I'm listening," he said simply. Ethan exhaled. "Then start by telling the truth, everywhere it matters." The investigation moved quickly. Emails confirmed intent. Access logs traced influence. Testimony filled gaps. Agnes's authority, once unquestioned, met the limits of documented fact. Ruth's careful language unraveled under scrutiny. Public reaction shifted from shock to reckoning. Michael released a longer statement acknowledging wrongdoing and committing to structural reforms. He announced an interim leadership team and recused himself from certain decisions pending review. Some called it too little, others called it unprecedented. Amara avoided commentary. She focused on recovery, on the children, on the women who came to talk about work, about pain, about rebuilding. One afternoon, she faltered at the market, her leg buckling. Ethan caught her just in time. "That's enough for today," he said gently. She nodded, leaning on him. "Strength needs rest." In the weeks that followed, the truth did what truth does, it complicated lives. Ruth retained counsel. Agnes retreated into silence, her influence diminished. Amale Dlamini issued a statement stepping back from any personal association, praising transparency and independence. She sent Michael a private note. Honesty changes paths. Choose it. Michael read it twice. Then he went somewhere he had avoided. The eatery. Mama Halima recognized him instantly and blocked the doorway with her body. "She doesn't owe you," she said. "I know," Michael replied. "I'm not here to ask." He waited. Amara came down the stairs slowly, steadying herself. When she saw him, she stopped. "I'm here to listen," he said again, "if you'll allow it." She studied him, really studied him for the first time in years. The man before her looked smaller, stripped of certainty. "Listening is a beginning," she said. "Not an ending." He nodded. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that inside a modest eatery a reckoning had begun, not with forgiveness but with accountability. And that would make all the difference. The backlash did not arrive as a single wave. It came in surges, headlines cresting and receding, opinion columns sharpening investors, whispering employees, recalibrating loyalties. Onyango Holdings stood at the center of a public reckoning, and for the first time since its ascent, the company did not control the story. Michael Onyango felt the loss of control acutely. He moved through days thick with meetings and nights heavier still. Counsel advised caution. Advisors urged restraint. Some board members pressed him to disappear until the storm passed. Others demanded more clearer apologies, measurable reform, decisive distance from the past. Michael complied with the process. He answered questions. He signed documents. He stepped aside where required. But the real pressure came from the spaces between moments when there was nothing to manage and nowhere to hide. Ethan remained with Amara. They did not celebrate. There was no triumph to savor. Victory. Ethan learned rarely felt clean. It felt exhausting. It felt unfinished. At the eatery, life continued with its own quiet insistence. Children came. Lessons resumed. Mama Halima enforced rest days with an authority that brooked no argument. Amara listened to her body more carefully, now honoring limits she once ignored. One afternoon, a woman approached Amara with a folded newspaper. "They're calling you brave," she said. "They're calling your son courageous." Amara smiled faintly. "They're calling a moment. Courage is a practice." Ethan watched the children learn and felt a steadiness he had never known. He slept better. He laughed more easily. And yet the knowledge of what remained, what still needed to be faced, kept him grounded. Michael requested a private meeting. Samuel advised caution. "If you agree, set terms." Amara considered this. "We meet," she said. "In public." They chose a neutral space, a community hall not far from the eatery. Chairs arranged in a circle, no podium, no cameras invited. The press waited outside anyway. Michael arrived early. He looked older, not in years but in posture, shoulders, sloped gaze, less certain. He stood when Amara entered, instinctive respect surfacing before pride could stop it. "Thank you for coming," he said. Amara sat carefully. Ethan took the seat beside her. Samuel sat opposite. Michael took a breath. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness." Amara nodded. "Good. I'm here to acknowledge harm," Michael continued, "and to hear what accountability looks like from you." The words were simple. The effort behind them was not. Amara spoke without raising her voice. She spoke of being removed as a liability, of having her life reduced to optics, of how isolation multiplies pain when it is enforced by those you trust. Michael listened. He did not interrupt. Ethan spoke next about surveillance, about silence, about the weight placed on a child to choose between comfort and conscience. Michael flinched but did not look away. When it was his turn, Michael did not defend himself. "I mistook power for protection," he said, "and I confused control with leadership. I taught my son the wrong lesson, and he taught me the right one." Outside murmurs swelled as word of the meeting spread. Inside, the work remained slow and precise. Amara set conditions: public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, structural changes to prevent future abuse, an independent fund to support accessibility and education, administered without his control, a restoration of her name, not as a symbol but as a person wronged. And one more thing she said: "I will not return to the mansion, not now, maybe not ever." Michael nodded, swallowing. "I accept." The announcement followed days later. Michael addressed employees first, then the public. He named failures. He outlined reforms. He relinquished certain privileges. He announced the Accessibility and Learning Trust, seeded with personal funds and governed independently. Skeptics remained. Trust, once broken, does not rebuild on schedules. Amalid Lamini released a final statement endorsing the reforms and affirming her withdrawal from any personal narrative. In a private message to Amara, she wrote, "You held the line. Thank you." Agnes Achieng did not attend the meeting. Her absence was noted. When questioned by investigators, she deflected. When pressed by the board, she withdrew. Influence it turned out required access, and access had narrowed. She retreated into quiet resentment, her authority reduced to memory. Ruth Muwakali's situation progressed through formal channels. She offered cooperation in exchange for leniency. The process was methodical. Consequences followed. At the eatery, a small celebration took place, not for the scandal, but for the trust fund's first grant to a local school. Children painted a sign. Mama Halima cooked extra. Ethan watched Amara speak with community leaders and felt pride bloom, not loud, not fragile, but rooted. Michael visited again briefly to deliver signed documents. He did not linger. "You're doing the work," Amara said as he stood to leave. "That matters." He nodded. "I will keep doing it." After he left, Ethan exhaled. That wasn't easy. Amara smiled. Change never is. The days that followed felt lighter. Not simple, not resolved, but lighter. Michael moved into a smaller apartment near the river. He walked more. He listened more. He learned to sit with discomfort without solving it. Ethan enrolled in a volunteer program tutoring students by choice, not as penance. He discovered joy in consistency. Amara's health improved with rest and care. She began training others to teach, expanding what she had started, without placing herself at the center. The story shifted again from spectacle to structure, and though the wounds were not erased, they were no longer hidden. The truth had moved from exposure to responsibility, and that Amara knew was where healing truly began. The pressure did not ease after the announcements. If anything, it intensified, reshaping itself into quieter, more dangerous forms. The spectacle had passed. Now came the long work of consequence, where reputations were tested, not by headlines but by endurance. Michael Onyango discovered that accountability was not a single act but a sequence. Regulators requested interviews. Donors asked questions with careful smiles. Partners recalculated risk. Each meeting demanded clarity without defensiveness, remorse without performance. Michael complied, but the effort hollowed him out. At night, he returned to an apartment that felt borrowed, its walls bare of memory. He slept lightly. He woke often. Agnes Achieng did not retreat quietly. She began with phone calls, private, selective, reaching out to old allies who owed her favors. She framed the events as a misunderstanding, a family dispute, blown out of proportion by an emotional child and an opportunistic lawyer. She spoke of legacy, threatened by sentiment. Some listened, others did not. When her calls failed to gain traction, Agnes shifted strategy. She questioned the trust's governance, hinting at impropriety without evidence. She suggested that Amara's proximity to community leaders could become political. She planted doubts where she could, trusting that doubt, once seeded, rarely needed proof. Ruth Mowikali watched this unfold from a distance, her own situation narrowing. On administrative leave, she retained counsel and negotiated terms. She offered cooperation documents, testimony, anything to shorten the path out of the spotlight. The calculus was simple survival through disclosure. Samuel Otieno received the first batch of materials. Late one evening, he read through them twice before calling Ethan. "It complicates things," Samuel said. "It strengthens the case, but it widens the circle." Ethan closed his eyes. "Including my grandmother." Samuel did not answer directly. Truth doesn't choose targets. It reveals them. At the eatery, Amara felt the strain settle into her body again. The days were full meetings about the trust conversations, with educators planning sessions that demanded presence and patience. She paced herself, but stress had a way of finding old injuries. One afternoon, as she climbed the stairs, pain flared unexpectedly, sharp enough to steal her breath. Ethan was there instantly. "Sit," he said. "She did heart racing. I'm fine," she insisted, then softened. "I will be." Mama Halima hovered hands on hips. "You don't carry the world alone," she said. "Even strong pillars crack if they do." Amara nodded, chastened. Michael requested another meeting, this time with Ethan alone. They chose a park near the river, neutral and open. Michael arrived early, hands in his pockets, watching water slide past rocks without resistance. Ethan approached, shoulders squared. "I won't ask you to come home," Michael began. "I won't ask you to protect me." Ethan waited. "There are people trying to undermine the trust," Michael continued. "Your grandmother included." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I know," Michael nodded. "I wanted you to hear it from me." "Why now?" Ethan asked. Michael swallowed. "Because choosing truth has costs, and I won't pretend otherwise." Ethan considered this. "Then pay them." Michael met his gaze. "I am." Across the city, Agnes convened a small gathering at her home. No press, no record. She spoke forcefully about loyalty, about family honor. She suggested that silence could be rewarded. The response was tepid. Times had changed. When investigators requested a formal statement from Agnes, she refused at first. Then she agreed, confident, composed. She denied intent, she minimized influence. She implied consent where none existed. Ruth's documents told a different story. The contradiction did not go unnoticed. At the Trust's inaugural workshop, Amara addressed a room of teachers and community organizers. She spoke about sustainability, about building systems that did not rely on heroes. She emphasized shared leadership, accountability, rest. Midway through, her voice faltered. She paused, breathing through pain. The room waited. "I'm all right," she said, smiling faintly. "And even if I weren't, the work would continue. That's the point." Applause followed, not loud, but steady. Outside, a reporter asked Ethan whether he feared retaliation. "I fear silence." "More," he replied. The investigation reached a tipping point when regulators requested sworn testimony from multiple parties, including Agnes. The summons landed like a bell tolling. Allies grew scarce. Michael watched the process with a grim clarity. This was no longer about image, it was about record. He submitted an additional statement acknowledging failures of oversight related to household influence. He named his own complicity without naming others. It was a careful balance, truthful, restrained, legally sound. Some praised the candor. Others accused him of strategic remorse. At night, Michael walked along the river, replaying choices he could not undo. He wondered, when ambition had become avoidance, he wondered how many moments of listening he had traded for control. Ethan, meanwhile, faced pressure of a different kind. Messages flooded in, some grateful, others hostile. Anonymous accounts accused him of betrayal, of opportunism. He read them once, then muted them. Amara noticed his fatigue. "You don't have to carry every voice," she said. He nodded. "I know. I just don't want to miss the ones that matter." One voice did matter. A school principal called to say the trust's first grant had been delayed, questions raised about governance. Agnes's fingerprints were faint but present. Samuel moved quickly, providing documentation clarifying structures. The delay lifted, but the message was clear. "They'll keep trying," Ethan said. Amara closed her eyes briefly. "Then we keep building." The regulators scheduled a final hearing. Ruth agreed to testify. Agnes did not withdraw her denials. The day before the hearing, Michael received a handwritten note delivered to his apartment. Family should protect its own. He folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. At the eatery, the children rehearsed for a small presentation, poems, short readings. Amara watched from her chair, smiling as Ethan helped one child steady his paper. For a moment, the world narrowed to what could be seen and touched. Then Samuel arrived with news. "Tomorrow decides a lot," he said, "for everyone." Amara nodded. "Then we go in steady." That night, each of them slept lightly, because the next day would not simply judge actions. It would decide whether truth, once spoken, would be allowed to stand. The hearing room was smaller than Amara expected. No grand pillars, no elevated stage. Just rows of chairs, a long table, and a quiet authority that came from process rather than spectacle. The walls were plain, the lighting unforgiving. This was not a place for performance. It was a place for record. Michael Onyango arrived early, seated beside counsel, hands folded. He did not look at his phone. He watched the door. Ethan entered with Amara and Samuel moments later. She moved carefully, her crutch tapping softly against the floor. A few heads turned, not in curiosity but recognition. The story had traveled ahead of her. Agnes Achieng arrived last. She walked in, upright chin, lifted her kitenge immaculate. She acknowledged no one. When she took her seat, she did so with the practiced confidence of someone long accustomed to rooms bending around her. The panel called the hearing to order. Statements were entered, procedures outlined. Then testimony began. Samuel presented first, methodical, precise. He walked the panel through timelines showing how access permissions were altered, how internal communications framed a private family matter as a corporate liability, how decisions made under the banner of risk management translated into removal without due process. The panel listened. Next came Ruth Moekali. She spoke clearly, voice steady but subdued. She confirmed her role, approving edits, shaping narratives, advising leadership under pressure. She acknowledged that household influence had guided her judgment. Was this influence formal? A panelist asked. No, Ruth replied. It was assumed. And did you question it? Ruth paused. No. The silence that followed carried weight. Then it was Agnes Achieng's turn. She stood without assistance, eyes sharp. I deny wrongdoing, she said. Advice is not coercion. Influence is not instruction. Samuel approached carefully. Mrs. Onyango, do you deny advising the communications team that Amara Onyango's presence posed reputational risk? I deny issuing orders, Agnes replied. Samuel nodded. I didn't ask about orders. A flicker crossed Agnes's face, quick, controlled. Emails were displayed, messages that suggested urgency. Phrases like "this cannot happen again" and "the company must be protected" appeared highlighted. Agnes leaned forward. Those words are interpretation. The panel chair leaned in. Context matters. When Amara's name was read into the record, the room stilled. Samuel called her to testify. Amara rose slowly, steadying herself. She did not rush. She took the oath and spoke calmly, her voice measured. She described the sequence of events being excluded, dismissed, removed. She spoke of access, cut support, withdrawn. She did not embellish. She did not accuse beyond what she experienced. When did you realize the decision was final? A panelist asked. When the gates closed, Amara replied. And no one answered my calls. A pause. How did that affect you? Amara inhaled. It reduced me to a problem. and problems are easier to discard than people. The words landed without force, but they stayed. Michael listened, jaw-tight, eyes fixed on the table. Ethan testified last. He spoke about surveillance, about monitored communications, about leaving, because silence had become complicity. He spoke about choosing truth over comfort, not as heroism, but necessity. "I didn't want to expose my family," he said. "I wanted to stop harm." The panel adjourned for deliberation. Hours passed. Outside, reporters waited. Inside, time stretched. Amara sat quietly, eyes closed. Ethan watched her concern etched across his face. Michael paced the hallway, then stopped, then paced again. He approached Agnes once, then thought better of it. When the panel returned, the room stood. Findings were read. Corporate influence had been improperly applied to a private family matter. Communications protocols were misused. Oversight failed. Accountability extended upward. Ruth Moekali would face sanctions and referral. Onyango Holdings would implement mandated reforms. An independent monitor would be appointed. And Agnes Achieng Onyango, the panel chair, paused. "Mrs. Onyango is found to have exerted undue influence resulting in harm. While not an employee, her actions breached governance boundaries. She is barred from advisory involvement and referred for further review." Agnes did not react. Michael closed his eyes. Outside, cameras flashed as the outcome was announced. Headlines shifted from scandal to consequence. Agnes left without speaking. Michael stepped to the podium afterward. He did not read from notes. "This process has named failures," he said. "Some mine, some inherited, all real." He looked at Ethan, then Amara. "I accept the findings," he continued, "and I will comply fully." Questions followed. He answered briefly. At the eatery that evening, a small crowd gathered, not to celebrate, but to witness. Mama Halima served tea. Children sat quietly, sensing importance. Amara addressed them simply. "Accountability isn't revenge," she said. "It's repair." Ethan stood beside her, relief and exhaustion mingling. Michael did not attend. He went instead to the river, standing where water moved without memory. He thought of Agnes, of lessons learned early and never questioned. He thought of the cost of loyalty when it replaces ethics. Later, a message arrived from Agnes. "You chose strangers over blood." Michael typed a response, then erased it. He placed the phone face down. In the days that followed, structures shifted. The trust received its delayed grant approvals. Schools began programs. Accessibility projects broke ground. The monitor began work. Amara focused on training others, stepping back from daily instruction. Her health improved with consistent care. She laughed more. Ethan enrolled in university courses aligned with public policy and ethics. He volunteered not as a statement, but as practice. Michael resigned from the board, temporarily honoring the monitor's recommendations. He worked with advisors to redesign governance, real change, slow and unglamorous. Agnes withdrew from public life. The story settled into something quieter. Not victory, resolution. And as the city resumed its rhythms, one truth held steady: when power is confronted with clarity and held there long enough, it must change shape. The reckoning did not end with the ruling. If anything, it deepened. The days after the hearing unfolded with a gravity that no headline could fully carry. Consequences once named demanded follow-through. And follow-through tested everyone, especially those who had built their lives on certainty. For Michael Onyango, the silence was the hardest part. Without meetings to dominate or crises to manage, he faced long stretches of time, unfilled by urgency. He attended mandated sessions with the independent monitor, reviewing governance failures line by line. Each document felt like a mirror, angled to show what he had avoided seeing: patterns of delegation that excused neglect, habits of deference that silenced dissent. "You didn't create the culture alone," the monitor told him during one session. "But you sustained it." Michael nodded. I see that now. What will you do differently? Michael paused. Listen sooner. Act slower. The answer surprised him as much as anyone. Amara Onyango experienced a different aftermath. Invitations arrived daily, panels, interviews, awards. She declined most of them. Recognition she knew could become another form of pressure. She chose instead to focus on the trust's rollout, working with educators to ensure funds translated into classrooms, not banners. At a site visit to a newly retrofitted school, she watched children navigate ramps designed for access. A teacher approached her, quietly. "My sister stopped coming to school after her accident," the woman said. "She's thinking of returning now." Amara smiled. "Tell her she's welcome." Her health continued to improve, not because pain disappeared, but because life no longer demanded she deny it. She rested when needed. She delegated. She trusted others to carry parts of the work. Ethan balanced study with service, discovering that impact often arrived without applause. He attended lectures, volunteered at policy clinics, and returned to the eatery most evenings to help Mama Halima close up. One night as they stacked chairs, Mama Halima spoke softly. "You didn't just protect your mother," she said. "You protected many." Ethan shook his head. "I just didn't look away." The public, meanwhile, recalibrated. Some praised Michael's acceptance of responsibility. Others remained skeptical. Trust, once fractured, mended slowly, if at all. Michael understood that repair did not guarantee restoration. He accepted the distance. When he asked to meet Amara again, she agreed, this time on her terms. They chose a quiet cafe near the river. No aides, no lawyers. Michael arrived early and waited. Amara approached steadily, her crutch resting lightly in her hand. She took the seat opposite him. "Thank you for coming," Michael said. She nodded. "What do you want to discuss?" Michael took a breath. "Not reconciliation, not return. I want to ask how I can support what you're building without controlling it." Amara considered this. Support means respect, and respect means limits. "I can live with limits," Michael replied. "Then start there," she said. "Keep your promises. Don't seek credit. And understand that forgiveness, if it comes, will come slowly." Michael nodded, eyes damp but steady. "I understand." They spoke of practicalities, the trust's needs, boundaries for communication. How to navigate shared concern for Ethan without triangulation. It was not tender. It was honest. As they stood to leave, Michael hesitated. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Amara met his gaze. "I know," she replied. "Now do better." Agnes Achieng watched these developments from a distance. Stripped of influence and barred from advisory roles, she retreated into bitterness. She blamed outsiders. She blamed weakness. She blamed time. But alone, without the echo of agreement, her certainty faltered. One afternoon, she attempted to visit the trust office. She was politely refused. The message was clear. Boundaries held. Ruth Muakali's case concluded with sanctions and a negotiated settlement. She released a statement acknowledging error and accepting responsibility. Some believed her. Others did not. The system moved on. At Onyango Holdings, reforms took root: new oversight committees, whistleblower protections, transparent reporting. Progress was incremental, measured. Michael observed from the margins, contributing without commanding. The company stabilized. The city breathed. Then came the moment no one expected. At a community forum hosted by the trust, Ethan was invited to speak, not as Michael's son, but as a student. He stood before a modest crowd and spoke about courage without spectacle. "Systems change when people stop pretending harm is necessary," he said, "and families heal when truth is allowed to stand." Amara watched from the back, pride, quiet and fierce. Michael watched online, unseen. The forum ended with applause, not thunderous but sustained. Later that evening, Michael sent a message to Ethan. "You spoke well." Ethan replied a few minutes later, "I learned from watching what happens when people don't speak." Michael read the line twice. Weeks passed. The Trust published its first impact report, clear metrics, candid challenges. Schools opened programs. Accessibility projects continued. No banners bore Amara's face. No buildings carried her name. That she insisted was the point. One evening, as the sun lowered over the river, Amara and Ethan walked together. The water reflected the city's lights, broken and beautiful. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked suddenly. She shook her head. "No, I regret the pain, not the truth." They stood quietly, listening to the water. Elsewhere, Michael packed a box in his apartment. Letters, photographs, reminders of a life lived too fast. He placed one photo on the desk, Ethan as a child, laughing. Amara beside him, steady and present. He did not put it away. The reckoning had reached its deepest point, not in punishment, but in recognition. And recognition once earned does not fade easily. Time did not heal everything, but it taught everyone where healing could begin. Months passed, and the city learned to carry the story differently. What had once been scandal settled into precedent. The name Onyango no longer sparked immediate outrage or awe. It invited discussion. And discussion, unlike spectacle, required listening. Amara Onyango found her rhythm. Her days were structured, now balanced between planning meetings and quiet hours of rest. She no longer climbed every stair herself. She no longer apologized for needing help. The Trust had grown into a living system, schools coordinating with one another, teachers sharing resources, community leaders shaping priorities without waiting for approval. One afternoon, she visited a classroom where a young girl using crutches read aloud for the first time without fear of mockery. When the girl finished, the room erupted into applause. Amara felt tears sting her eyes, not from pain but from recognition. This was why boundaries mattered. Ethan thrived in ways neither of his parents had predicted. University challenged him, not just intellectually but ethically. He debated policy, questioned frameworks, and learned that justice was rarely clean. He volunteered at legal clinics, listening more than speaking, understanding that advocacy began with humility. At night, he still returned to the eatery, helping Mama Halima close shop. "You could live anywhere," she teased one evening. He smiled. "This is where I learned what matters." Michael Onyango continued his work quietly. He honored every agreement. He kept his distance. He attended therapy, not as performance, but as practice. He learned to sit with discomfort, without solving it, to listen, without preparing rebuttals. At Onyango Holdings, he remained absent from leadership, resisting calls to return prematurely. The reforms continued without him at the center. He took that as proof they were working. One evening, Michael received an invitation, not from a boardroom, but from a school. The Trust had organized a modest event celebrating its first year. Teachers, students, and community members gathered. No cameras, no speeches longer than necessary. Michael attended as a guest. He stood at the back, unnoticed at first. He watched Amara speak briefly, thanking partners, acknowledging challenges, emphasizing sustainability. He watched Ethan help children line up for refreshments, laughing easily. No one announced his presence, and that was right. Later, as the crowd thinned, Amara noticed him. She did not freeze. She did not leave. She approached calmly. "You came," she said. "I was invited," Michael replied. "As a listener." She nodded. "Then listen." A teacher stepped forward to thank the Trust. A parent spoke about access. A student shared a poem about being seen. Michael listened. When the event ended, Amara and Michael stood together in the quiet courtyard. Not close, not distant, just present. "I won't ask to rebuild what was," Michael said. "I'll respect what is." Amara met his gaze. "That's enough." Agnes Achieng did not attend. She lived now in reduced orbit, respected by some, resented by others, central to none. The authority she once wielded had dissolved into memory. On some days she insisted she had been wronged. On others, she said nothing at all. The world had moved forward without her permission. Ruth Muwakali moved on as well, her career reshaped by consequence. She spoke publicly, once acknowledging harm and warning against power unchecked by empathy. The response was mixed. She accepted that too. Life did not arrange itself neatly, but it did arrange itself honestly. On a quiet evening by the river, Ethan sat with both his parents separately together, only by circumstance. They watched the water move, reflecting the city's lights in broken lines. "I used to think justice meant punishment," Ethan said. "Now I think it means change that lasts." Amara smiled. "That's wisdom." Michael nodded. "And responsibility." They did not hold hands. They did not pretend to be whole. They were something better. They were real. Weeks later, the Trust published its second report, Clear Gains, Clear Gaps, Transparent Challenges. It did not promise miracles. It promised effort, and effort sustained reshaped futures. On the anniversary of the day the gates closed, Amara returned to the spot alone. She stood there briefly, then turned away without looking back. Some doors did not need reopening. At the eatery that evening, the children rehearsed again, this time for a small play about courage. Ethan helped with lines. Mama Halima supervised costumes. Amara watched content. She had lost a marriage built on silence. She had gained a life built on truth. Michael watched from a distance, respectful, changed, accountable. And in a city that moved endlessly forward, their story settled into something rare, not a fairy tale. A lesson. That power without empathy corrodes. That silence enables harm. That children can become the conscience adults abandon. And that dignity, once reclaimed, does not need permission to stand. Sometimes the most painful losses are not the things taken from us, but the moments when we are told quietly or loudly that our dignity no longer matters. This story is not about wealth or scandal. It is about what happens when power forgets empathy and when silence is mistaken for strength. Amara's journey reminds us that being vulnerable does not make a person weak. What weakens us is a world that measures human worth by convenience, image, or usefulness. When someone is discarded because they are slower, different, or inconvenient, the damage reaches far beyond one individual. It teaches others that love is conditional, that loyalty has limits, and that humanity can be negotiated. Yet this story also shows another truth. Courage does not always come from the powerful. Sometimes it rises from those who have the least to lose and the most to protect. Ethan's choice was not driven by rebellion or anger, but by conscience. He chose truth over comfort, accountability over loyalty without ethics. In doing so, he proved that children are not just heirs to wealth or names. They can become the moral compass adults abandon. Michael's transformation is not a redemption fantasy. It is a reminder that change is possible, but never cheap. Accountability costs status. Growth costs pride. Real repentance is not about words or public gestures, but about sustained action, boundaries, and humility. Forgiveness, when it comes, is not owed. It is earned slowly, if at all. At its heart, this story is about healing that does not erase the past, but learns from it. It is about building systems that protect the vulnerable, relationships that honor boundaries, and lives that no longer depend on silence to survive. If this story moved you, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. What part spoke to you most and why? And if you believe stories like this matter, stories about justice, dignity, and hope, please subscribe to the channel and walk this journey with us. Your voice, like Ethan's, might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.